5,
4,
3,
2,
1. Hi, Tribe. I'm Evelyn.
And I'm Rasavia.
And you're listening to Objectively Type, a podcast where we explore the objective personality system. So today we want to talk about what we're calling the Quadra temperaments, and we're kind of borrowing that term from Socionics, but we're not talking about Socionics. Neither one of us know anything about
So you don't have to know anything about Socionics. This is still OPS.
Right.
Yeah. And this is
We
a great
don't know anything,
opportunity.
but it was a convenient way to call. Yeah, go ahead.
To tell you guys that we might have some technical difficulties with the video. Our internet is being so anytime that happens, we apologize greatly.
Yeah, apologize in advance for
We're just going to keep going. Yeah.
Fine. Yeah, we're keep rolling. So we're just going to keep it going. But yeah, so the what we're calling the Quadra temperaments are essentially when you have I don't know the best way to put it.
I would say
like you have certain, like everybody has a stack with certain observer axes and decider axes, and the combination of that kind of makes a quadrant. There are 4 quadrants. I don't know. Do you want to try to describe it better than me? You've got sensory.
Yeah. I think you were right on. Like it's just the way that the axes combine. And also, like, for example, you pick an animal, say we go with play, right? There are 4 different versions of play. There's NT play, there's ST play, there's NF play, and there's SF play.
There you go.
And those are going to have different flavors. And somebody, regardless of the order of your functions, you're going to have SF play depending on your functions.
Right. There you go. Thank you.
So that's what we're kind of exploring. We're going to have, what did we call it? A TE powwow?
A TE powwow.
We're going to have a TE powwow.
We're going to bang some blocks together.
Yes.
And just kind of talk about this. So, and part of the reason I'm hosting this episode is, I think in a previous episode, I mentioned that I took kind of the 32 major types.
Your cleanse, as I've been calling
it. OPS, 16 Myers-Briggs plus the. Yeah. And going through those 32, one of the things I really did notice is kind of the language differences for these different quadrants.
Yeah.
And then one of the other ENFPs in our little group chat that we have had mentioned the Socionics quadrants and how she knew that she was in Delta quadrant. Like she just knew because as an ENFP, the NFPs are in Delta. So that part was something she knew. And when she mentioned that, I said, okay, well, look a little bit more into this and learn more about it. And that's when I started kind of putting together that, oh, okay, this is the same thing I've been noticing too. So yeah.
So there's like, if we're talking about the NFPs in the Delta quadrant, then also the STJs are also in that same quadrant. So they all use the NESI and the FITE axis. And so that's what makes that quadra.
Yeah. So why don't we go down the 4? So these are like the 4 from Socionics. So
yeah. So we'll give you some sensory, guys.
So the alpha quadrant is the Myers-Briggs NTPs and SFJs. So those are NESI observers and TIFE deciders, right? Beta quadrant are the STPs and the NFJs. That's the SENI and the TIFEs. Gamma is the SFPs, NTJs. So this is Versavia's quadrant. Yeah, go Gamma. Gamma.
Apparently I'm one of those boo girls.
Right. SENI, FITE, and then mine is Delta quadrant, NESI, FITE. And like I thought for me, maybe I can't help but think of Star Trek because they like put space in quadrants too. So like Alpha quadrant is where Earth is, and like Star Trek Voyager took place way out in Delta. And so it makes sense that like the NFPs would be in Delta quadrant because we are just so like out there.
Yeah. With all that NE floating around.
Yeah. So yeah, go ahead.
I lost my train of thought. It was important, but apparently not important enough
to hold on to. Yeah. That
feminine NI, god damn it.
So I guess let's just start with the alphas. So the NTP SFJ. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
So I think kind of like for myself going into this, and I kind of want us to align, like the goal of this conversation, and I will be really surprised if we reach this goal in one conversation. I think this will be many conversations, but the goal of the conversation for me is to have a like temperament for each of these quadras in the way that we have the letter
Okay.
temperaments, where we have like culture and nerdiness and hippiness and spirituality, or whichever words you're using. But there's this like temperament flavor to it. Ideally, what I want to walk out of this conversation with is identifying that temperament for the quadras.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good idea. Yeah. It's almost like a subtype sort of a thing, you know?
Yeah, because there is a difference in like you as an SI user, you're very specific and particular about your words, whereas me as an SE user, my words are not as important, right? I'm more flexible with them.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I am specific
And
and definitely.
but
Yeah.
we can hear that in
In
like
the
you were saying when
language.
you were doing your cleanse, yeah, that you could hear the differences in the language.
Right. Right. You can. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, we talked a little bit before recording how we wanted to approach this. I was thinking of just going down the four and kind of talking about, like you said, like if it's a temperament, what sort of things do you see with those types? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So starting with alpha, the NTPs and the SFJs, right? They've got the NESI observer X's, TIFE. So for me, coming from Delta, like I get their observers because they're also speaking that NESI, but it's like because they're speaking FE, that's when suddenly I don't fully,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Whereas for me, the NTPs and SFJs, they might as well be speaking a completely different language because we have no functions in common, right? And so I
Yeah,
struggle with
yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah, the SFJs, I don't know, I don't feel like I know a ton of NTPs. I feel like there's a lot of SFJs out there, or at least, you know.
Yeah. Actually, as you were saying that, I could summon up some images of SFJs in my head, but NTPs, it kind of drew a blank.
Right. I feel like a lot of my experience with them has that FE kind of high, you know what I mean? But even TI, and we've talked about this before, I think in our shadow functions one, about how FE and TI is definitely a different language, you know, compared to us. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm getting the little error popping up saying your internet connection is unstable. I don't know
Yeah,
why. I don't know what's
it's
going on.
going back and forth. That's
Maybe
okay.
Comcast is doing some work or something. I don't know. It's weird.
Yay.
Yeah.
We'll
But
make do.
yeah, so these folks, so if we go down like their animals, I thought that was a good point. You look at they've got the ST sleep. So SITI sleep.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, right? And that's one that I
What is that?
understand the least.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like, I mean, you know, ST is like what is really like what works in reality. If you look at SI as like the past, also like what happened previously. And so maybe it's a kind of akin to my sleep, where for me, it's like, what do I value in the sensory? Maybe it's like what works for me, introvertedly TI in the sensory. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm looking at the celebrities doc, and for
Am I still
ST
here?
Sleep, yes,
Yeah.
for ST Sleep we have Elon Musk, Gretchen Rubin,
Okay.
Sam Harris. So those are people who have ST Sleep as a savior. Um,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
also, I guess anybody in on that row will have ST Sleep in their stack because they're all INTPs.
Yeah, okay. Those are good examples. Okay. And I remember the Gretchen Rubin class in particular, a lot of people they were thinking she was FE, I think, right?
Yeah,
I think they were thinking she
and
was FE.
and
Yeah.
that's the interesting thing because they have FE Blast,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So their values are oriented externally, communally, whereas their thinking is oriented internally and is personal.
Yeah. I think Mr. Rogers is in that category too. I think he might be TISI, if memory serves. So he's also in that ST sleep
Yeah. We also had Lindsay
stock, you
DeFranco.
know,
She
although
also has
the decider
SITI.
version of that. Yeah. Right.
Lindsay.
Right. Her demon FE was very clear to me. I just saw so much demon FE with Lindsay. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
ST Sleep, I feel like, and I don't know, this might be just me pulling shit out of my ass, but I feel like ST Sleep um likes to physically create things.
Hmm.
Because of that SI and wanting that sensory to be like organized and I guess almost contained, and TI being like, does this work?
Does this work? Yeah. Yeah. And then, any making connections across a wide spectrum and everything, maybe that lends some creativity,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like we started with the hardest one of all because this is the one that we don't understand at all.
Right. Well, get it out of the way. Then we're not rushing it at the end, because consume, man, any TI consume is a different
Right. So,
animal.
okay. So this is something that when talking about the consume letters and their associations, I've kind of noticed that a lot of people, like, for example, if you look at Neil deGrasse Tyson, right? He's an ENTP. So he
Right.
has SF blast,
Yeah.
and NT consume, and he's exceptional at blasting in an SF way, but in the realm of NT things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I find that a lot of, sorry, I'm kind of jumping here a little bit, but a lot of people who are even INTJs or ENTJs, they have that NT blast, but they blast about SF things. Like if you think about, like Marie Forleo or what's his name? The Atomic Habits guy, James Clear.
Oh, James Clear. Yeah.
Those
I was thinking
are,
Tim Ferriss.
oh,
The
Tim
other.
Ferriss. Those are like
Yeah.
behavioral things, and those seem very,
Behavioral.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas NT consumes, I don't feel like they consume behavioral things the way that SF consumes do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean,
If
and,
that
and
makes sense.
again, yeah. Again, sort of it is interesting to kind of blend, right? Because I've got NF consume, so I can kind of
Yes.
get it. Like they are just like with the NF consumes, we are gathering ideas. We're gathering ideas that we like. And so they are gathering ideas that work. So it's this
Yeah.
NT puzzle solving in their consume. Yeah. Excuse me.
Yeah. Gathering ideas that work, and you're gathering ideas that
I like
that
are valuable.
that are valuable. Yeah, that have an emotional,
Yeah.
that have an emotional component or a value component to it, which I think also when we talk about like all the different flavors of religion that you have consumed, and the spiritual things that you have consumed.
Mm-hmm.
And that is definitely something that you could see, like, because my NF is all introvert, you're not going to see my NF, whereas
Right.
I'm going to see some of your NF because some of it is
Right.
extroverted.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so do we want to talk about their blast at all? I mean, let's go there.
SF blast.
SF blasters, yeah. I think this is where the SFJs especially get that reputation of being teachers and mothers and things like that, right? Because they're looking at like the organized sensory that the tribe can value all together.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
what we value. These are like the bastions of society, the SFJs, Yeah.
Yeah, and especially in terms of teaching and education, history, looking at history, and SI loves its history,
Mm-hmm.
and looking at things historically and what happened in order to be able to kind of like ground the any that's going on.
Yeah, it's like we need context. I mean, that's how I experience it as an SINE user. Is SI is like my context, and so like I need that as sort of a base before I can. I mean, I tend to gather, but I have to put it in context. It's got to have some known context, like
So
organized
you see
sensory.
SI as context.
Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah.
I see NI as context.
Oh, really? I see NI as like a vision more so.
Well, I mean, context in the sense that like context, well, yeah. To me, context answers the why, but I guess to you, context answers the what.
It's the what. So when I'm using the word context, I mean like, and this is the way. So like one of my strengths in my strengths finder profile is
Interesting.
context. And the way that they describe context is like past history,
You froze a little
putting
bit.
your current experience into a larger context. Oh, did I on my end?
Yeah.
I froze a little bit. Yeah. So I'll just say that again. So like from a strengths finder standpoint is kind of where I'm coming at it, which is your past history gives some context as to what you're doing today. And so that's how I experience it. And it's like one of my top, 5 strengths in the strengths finder or whatever. And so they use it, and I think a lot of systems use it in a very similar to SI kind of history.
Interesting. Okay, cool. Okay.
That's what that means to me. NI is more of like a conceptual framework. I think that's what you're trying to say, is like a framework of concepts. would be more on the NI usage of that word if you were to do that. Yeah. Yeah.
And then
So
we get to
their
NF
NF
play,
play.
which NF play is just like, is funny as shit, man.
Yeah.
NF play is so funny, and it's fun because you have those SFJs that like seem, especially when you think of like the proper school teacher, or like when I think of SFJs, I think of what's his name's mom in that 70s show. Like I just think of this very SFJ woman, but then like when that NE comes out, or like Amanda's an SFJ, and her NEFE play, she's just the sharp wit on it. I love.
Exactly. Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah, it's fun. It brings up the energy of the tribe, because FE is responding to the tribe's energy and vibe, and so they're able to really do that really well. In our LeVar Burton episode, we both kind of were thinking that Brent Spiner was
NEFE.
Was possibly an NF play kind of guy. Yeah. And that was what I saw with him, is like he would just kind of throw these concepts out there, and isn't this funny? Aren't we having fun? It's play. It truly is play in the more playful sense. FE play is more
because
playful.
You're not like TE trying to make something work, nor are you like S like trying to ground it. NF play is just, it's very like, I guess it's the most abstract of the plays.
It's the most abstract of the plays, yeah.
In a good, in a really lovely kind of way, really enjoyable way. And we never really talked about him because we were originally going to type him, and then we didn't.
Was Bo Burnham? Yeah, I know who you're thinking of. Last Chance.
Who? Oh no, Lin-Manuel.
Oh, Lin-Manuel Miranda. Yeah, he seems like an NF play kind of guy.
Yeah, definitely the NE, right?
Yeah.
And I would have to sit down and think if he's FE or not. But yeah, he has that energy.
Yeah, he has that energy. Yeah, whether that's like his savior, or if he's using an FI to kind of make an FE like effect kind of a thing, I don't know. But yeah.
It would also make sense because like now I'm trying to type him, but like he wrote a play about a historical figure. Like that is very SI.
He was reading that book.
And I mean, like the Hamilton is very beautiful SF blast.
Yes. Yeah. I think so.
Feel like.
And it's very NE too, because it's a historical figure, right? He makes such beautiful connections, and he's bringing in hip hop and all these different styles. And he's taking something and and that's NE. I love that.
Yes. Yeah. So Brent Spiner and him as
he's somewhere over
NEFE.
here.
Yeah.
Somewhere in this NTP.
We never did. Yeah, we never typed him because we already discussed him. So now we can't type him.
Yeah, now we can't. Oh well.
Okay, we have plenty other people.
Right. So the next group, the betas, SENITIFE, the STPs, NFJs. I remember talking to Kendrick, and we were talking about how ENFJs, because my best friend is a ENFJ.
Oh no, you froze.
I think he said one of his good friends is an ENFJ, and I was like, is there something about ENFPs and ENFJs like getting along? And he was saying that like the ENFJs are just always like available, basically. So they like to make friends with a lot of people.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Because of that FE, and the SE may be in there too. Like they're easy to get along with, if you will. And that's kind of been my experience with the NFJs. It's like the FE, weirdly, because I don't share any of those functions, right?
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask about. Because this is your
I get along
opposite.
with these guys.
Yeah.
This is my opposite. Yep. Yeah. So what's your experience with the STP NFJs?
I love it. I get along very well with FE users.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of my friends are FE users. And yes, definitely like, yeah, I guess TI I have a harder time with, and I think that's because it's a demon function, demon shadow, but the FE I get along with really, really well.
Yeah.
And they also,
I think it depends for me because one of our, we're just going to say our favorite people. We're just going to go ahead and rank people. But like, Manny from the group. NITI, like that flavor of it. Like
that's what so, the first one, we'll share this infographic with you guys, but like we're looking at a little chart of all the types and stuff. So sleep, they have NTSleep. And so you have Manny, right? A good friend of mine I think she's very close to Eminem's type. So she's double masculine with NITI saviors. So she's got those feminine saviors. And that NTSleep is just, I find it fascinating. But like I'm SF, so I'm fascinated with NT, right? But also NTSleep and just like
Yeah.
going spelunking in the brain of someone who has NTSleep is a lot of fun for me.
Yeah, yeah. And what's interesting with those INFJs, the jumpers, the lead NT sleeps, you know,
Hmm.
they're still like I still like have a connection with them as a
Yeah.
NT savior myself. Like we still work the same, even though I'm NT play and he's NT sleep. We've experienced that. We're like, I remember there was once where there was a comment and he and I had the exact same observer freak out, like exactly the same of like trying to bang these blocks together. So we're still NT. It's just we're coming at it from like two totally different, you know, directions. It's
Yeah.
it's it's a cool thing. So yeah, NT sleep is really fascinating. It's this internal like problem solving engine thing.
And I think that, so when we talk about TI, which I don't know if we mentioned this in an episode, but you and I have talked about how TI is like, what is the truth?
Mhm.
And let me bring my identity to it. Like, I think it was um, Benjamin who
Benjamin.
first said it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I also think that that flavor of TI is very much for people who are in the SENI axis, because NI wants to have a single unifying theory of life, the universe, and everything, right? And that's a very like, and TI in some ways does as well, except in a very like, does this logically make sense?
Right.
And I wonder, and so I'd love to hear from you guys, if you have ST sleep, like, does it function the same way? Does your TI also want to have this
Yeah.
unifying theory of how everything works in a way that is internally consistent with your logic?
Yeah. 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 And actually, Benjamin's in this Quadra too, right? Because he's
Yeah,
TI
yeah,
and
he is.
SE, so he's one of these.
Yep,
Yeah.
TISE.
Yeah. So they're consume SETI consume. Yeah. I
It's
so I often say another way that I've like thought about this is the fact that to me, when Dave and Shannon talk about the animals, a lot of times they're talking a lot about their own functions. We're going to get to that one next,
yes.
but when they talk about consume, they are talking a lot about SEFI consume, which is like taking in what you like. And this flavor of consume, the ST consume, is just like a click off from that. Like it's still taking in the sensory, but it's like what works internally for you, right? Like
Yeah.
what's your internal truth kind of a thing. Yeah.
And I mean, and I think you can hear this from our language. We clearly don't understand it nearly as deeply as we understand our own functions.
Right.
Like what, like you said, like this ST sleep and this consume, and then there's this like,
Yeah.
so what does that consume look like?
Yeah, I mean, the only way we can sort of come at it is through the definitions, right? Because we don't experience it. But, you know, especially
Right.
me, for me, it's like this is my opposite,
Foreign.
right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it is.
Totally different language.
Hmm. Yeah.
I would,
And then, well, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say the same thing we already said, that ST consume would be then like what works in reality. I want to know all the things that actually work in reality.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like a lot of Benjamin's interview kind of feels that way of like, you know, he's looking at the
Yeah.
sensory of what the person's giving, and then he's kind of running it against like, okay, does this match his
My
subjective
TI,
my
yes.
his TI of the definition or whatever.
Of his internal model of that he has of
Yeah,
TI of how things are working.
right, right. And so I think that's a good example of that ST kind of happening, yeah, in real time. So, their next one, the blast, the NF blasters,
I love
as we
NF
call them.
Blast.
You
If you
love
have
you some
NF
NF.
Blast, I love it.
I
I
know.
do.
I am less a fan of NF blast. I don't hate
Yeah.
it though. Like I'm not like a huge like get away from me, but I
Yeah.
just, you know, NI, to me, NI blast, so whether we're talking NF blast or NT blast, does feel like controlling the tribe. Because for me, NI is kind of like where we're going, a vision or a concept that we're building on. And then FE is like, we want to take those values there, right? So Darren Brown to me is like, that is NF blast. He's got a
Yeah.
vision and he's it feels manipulative. I'm just using that from my perspective, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Of
But I
like,
mean, like,
yeah,
so, okay, so to remove any emotional charge from the word manipulative, like, what does that mean?
right.
That means that, like, you have a goal and you are orchestrating things to achieve that goal, right? And
Right.
in this particular case, FE, by its definition, is the values of the tribe, right? And so NI will orchestrate such that they can the values of the tribe for this NI vision.
For this NI vision
So
or goal. Mm-hmm.
in some ways it is manipulative, but on the other hand, it's not necessarily always a bad thing. Like Obama has NF Blast and he did
Beautiful.
incredible things with it, right? He did and Trump has NF Blast too, and he's doing things with it. I won't say incredible,
Right.
but he's doing things with it.
Right. Yeah.
And so, I think it can be manipulative, but
so
not
to me,
necessarily in a bad way. Sorry.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Well, yeah. Well, I think I pretty
With
much
great
said
power comes great responsibility.
There you go. So NF blasters, use it carefully, right?
Yes.
Yeah, because I was just reiterating the point I made earlier that, yeah, to me, the N blast is more of the controlling blast. So when we talk about blast as controlling the tribe, N blast feels more controlling to me than S blast. S blast feels like this is what is happening and I'm teaching you, right?
That's fascinating because I feel the opposite.
Whereas N blast is like a leadership kind of a thing, which is,
I feel the opposite.
Mm-hmm. Oh, you do?
Yeah, I feel more stifled by S blast than I do by N blast. N blast feels like, yeah, of course. Whereas S blast, and so it's interesting that you say it's the NF blast that you struggle with because it's the SF blast that I struggle with. So I have a SF consume. So when you flip the consume and it turns into the blast, that's where I'm like, no, you're doing SF wrong. And for you, it's like you have your NF consume, and when people are using your NF letters, but to blast, it feels icky.
That makes sense. Yeah. I see what you're saying. Yeah. I guess what I'm trying to say is that because SI almost by definition is just the organized sensory, it isn't, I mean, I think from your point of view, you're right, because you're trying to gather the sensory. And so you're saying like there's more sensory there than these people are sort of taking account for, right? Because they've already narrowed down the sensory. So what they're giving you in their blast is this like narrowed down sensory that you may or may not think is valid. And so feels controlling maybe. Is that where you're saying? Because to me, it's like, because it's almost like S blast is almost like storytelling because it's already going over known history, right?
SF blasters in particular, I find to be, if you look at a lot of our SF blasters, they're excellent storytellers.
Right. Whereas to me, NF and NT blast are more about projecting of a vision of where we want.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Not where we've been. So storytelling is sort of like where we've been, our known history. Dang it, I lost it. Where we want to go.
Yeah. NI is more future oriented.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. And it also, like, I think we give people our saviors. So as an SE user, I give people a lot of sensory because I'm coming from a place of thinking that, hey, they want to gather all the sensory. Mm-hmm. So when I'm hearing SF blast, I want more details that an SF blaster is not going to give me because those details are relevant to what it is that they're telling. And I think for you, it's probably the opposite, where you want to gather the concepts, and NI users have already narrowed those down, and you're like, yeah, but what about all these others?
Yeah, that's a common thing that me and the other ENFPs say is like the feeling that we have as NE users is like there's so many other concepts that you're missing here, right? Because you've narrowed them down, right? So NF blast is definitely, it feels that way. Yeah,
and I think this is one of the things that Dave and Shannon aren't accounting for in how they're teaching. They're teaching in an SENI way. And for you, any SI users, you're going to have to figure out your way of typing that works for you, that works for gathering the concepts and grounding them in little bits of sensory.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. We'll talk about that in the next one. So play. So SEFE play is another really fun play, just like the NEFE. Yeah.
CFE play. And I never put these two together until Thomas joined our Slack. Is the what's the word? The class clown.
Okay. Yeah.
SCFE play just wants to come in. Here's all this chaos. Okay, bye.
Yeah. Now you talk about our animals reacting with my NT play. I'm like, this is some BS. Yeah. Like, no.
Yeah, that's how I feel. I like when people are doing, I found, especially through talking with other people, but with you as well, when people are doing our animals but in a different flavor, it feels wrong. So like when somebody is I have SF consume. If somebody's NT consuming, it feels wrong. So for you with NT play, when you see SF play, it's like,
Yeah.
what is going
Well, and it feels the most wrong when, yeah, you're 180 degrees apart, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
like you said,
exactly.
like the SF and the NT, that those are the ones that are just like,
Because
no,
those
that's
are your shadow demon animal,
yeah.
like your shadow demons combined, right?
So
It's
it
gonna
just
feel
feels,
extra wrong.
it feels
Yeah.
extra wrong. I have a hard time sitting through it. Like
Which
when it's happening, I'm just like, can we go? Like it's so draining. That's the other thing. It's so draining because the SE is draining, and then all this
and the
FE
FE is
draining.
draining. Yeah,
I just
that makes
can't.
sense.
Like you said, it's my demon. I mean, it's my shadow demon. So it's just like, this is the worst. Yeah. So
And
anyway, sorry. Love you, Thomas.
yeah, well, for anyone who's listening, like I hope you guys know that like these are our blind spots, and you all are gonna have the blind spot. Like I'm sure there's somebody out there who's NT consume who's like,
You hate
well,
mine.
your
Yeah.
SF consume is wrong. Like I get it. We
Yeah,
we all
exactly.
have those things that like we have an animalistic reaction to that is either positive or negative. That's just like our
Mhm.
wiring in some ways.
Exactly. Yeah. So I mean, I obviously, since getting my type, I recognize that that's what's happening, and it's so like helpful because you're like, okay,
That's why I'm so drained
exactly
or
that's why.
whatever it is.
Well,
Yes.
and actually, this brings up another good point. I've had people ask me, like I've had other ask me, hey, lead play, how do I get out there and do more? Like, go to parties and things like that. And I'm like, dude, I don't go to a party. You're not
NT
gonna find
play
me
is not parties.
there.
Yeah.
Exactly. But SF play, that's parties. That's getting out there in the
Oh
sensory,
my God,
having fun.
it so is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a friend who's a SCTI, and she's consumed play, so her play is SEFE, and I'm pretty sure her FE is masculine, but it only comes out when she drinks. And when
Oh,
she drinks, her thing is to make sure that everybody there is SEFEing, having loads of fun, and she will like punch you with that FE. She's like, "Hey, you got to make sure you're," but not like. At least I find it very endearing, and everybody loves her, but like that's how SEFE I think wants to just make sure that everyone is having fun in reality.
right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So next one.
Next
Did
one.
we pretty much capture that one? Yeah, so the next one now is Versavius and Dave and Shannon and my husband Luis, like
And
everybody,
other lots of awesome people.
lots of awesome people. I feel like this is the one that I feel like there's just so much, like I'm surrounded by these people for some reason. Like I don't know why. Both my quadrant and this one, the SFP NTJs, right? So I'm around a lot of
Interesting.
INTJs, ISTJs, and folks like that. And for some reason, yeah, like you're an ESFP, Heather's an ESFP, my husband's an
Huh.
INTJ,
I
David.
feel like I have a lot of people from STP and FJ in my life. My Quadra, and then also that one.
Yeah, well, that's true. I think in the close second would be that one, the STP NFJs. Yeah. Or I'm sorry, which one did you say? Did I say that wrong?
STP and FJs. Yeah. No, you said it right.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So tell us about your NF sleep.
NF
This one's gonna be
sleep.
easy. See, it was good to start with the hard
You're right. So NF sleep is just very um you don't see the NF hippie,
one.
and the NF sleep wants to have a single unifying theory of life, the universe, and my identity.
And done. Thanks. I don't like,
My values and my identity. I need to know what my values are. I need to know why I value them. That's
why?
very NF sleep. Yep. And I think you can hear it
Yeah.
in the
Yeah. Yeah.
language,
Yeah.
like you can hear
Mhm.
it in Dave and Shannon's language quite a bit as well, even with Shannon having it as a demon.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, and again, so as I've kind of hinted at before, when they defined the animals, they really saw them in light of their own functions.
Through yes, I
And
think that's very
another
true.
thing, actually, now's a good time to bring it up, is I do feel like they are, and I mean, you and I've talked about this, they're kind of leaving a void because they share functions. One of the cool things about you and me is
Yes.
we're not in the same quadrant. So we are coming at least two different observer points of view. Whereas those two, ENTJ and INTJ, they have the same functions. And so, yeah, of course, like when they see sleep, they're seeing it in the same way. They experience it in the same way,
Yes.
and so that's, like you said, like their teaching style maybe doesn't fit for some of the other types because like they're kind of built, wait, are they both energy dominant?
Yeah, they
Yeah.
are.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So they're shitting on the information all the time.
Right.
And they know that they're shitting on the information all the time. But it's also really frustrating because it's a class
Yeah,
and
they
they're
know
trying to
that one.
teach you
Yeah.
stuff. So you shouldn't be shitting on the information if you're sorry, I'm ranting. You can see that this is something
Yeah.
that pisses me off.
It gets her. I mean, it gets a lot of people. I think that one is the one that's kind of, at least people are talking about more. The
Yeah,
energy
and I
versus
actually
info.
think I might bring it up with them when they're down here.
Yeah.
In a couple
The
weeks.
yeah. So NF sleep, I feel like, is almost what we've always defined sleep as.
I think everything in this quadra is going to be like that, where so when they talk about how you need to
Yeah.
process
Mhm.
things, it's not like how somebody with NF sleep is going to be very, very different than ST sleep. ST sleep is not going to be processing in the same way,
Correct.
whereas NF sleep wants to know the why of identity.
Yeah. Thus the long walks in the dark and all that stuff, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, especially as a demon, So yeah, SF consume is that gathering. Now you should know all about SF consume.
So this is one that I
She's like,
actually
she's consuming, yes, as we go.
this is one that I would revise the definition from what Dave and Shannon have it, because I think they both have consume. They both have play above their consume,
Mm,
and so I think SF consume wants to consume on what people feel and what people's emotional and value states are. And how do you do that if not by going and bugging a
yeah,
bunch of people
yeah.
or observing people, right? So I think SF consume is going to seem very play-like. And I
Mhm.
think that's one of the reasons why even me with play dead last, I am a lot more like present and I have a lot more energy than I should for somebody who's play last.
Yeah, and I know like that was one thing that you early on were struggling with, of like, how does this work? How am I play last, but yet doing this activity?
Yes.
Yeah, all the time.
And
And I
it's
mean, I've
still,
I've seen it. Yeah, like you.
oh no, you
Sometimes
froze.
it feels like your play is higher than mine. Oh, I
And
froze. Am I back?
and I think that's very much because that SE wants to gather.
Yeah.
But it wants to, what does it want to gather? Like, so consume wants to gather for the self, right? But what is it that SF consume wants to gather? Wants to gather the sensory facts of like of people's emotional of individuals' emotional and value states.
Yeah.
And the
I,
only way that I'm going to do that is by bugging a bunch of people,
yeah, exactly.
right? Like there's or observing them. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
there's
I mean,
other
the FE
ways,
users
but
may just give it to you. I don't know. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
that's true. And then NT blasters, that's another one.
that's what you guys have been hearing while I blabber on.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And we
Yeah.
talked, we kind of talked a lot about that in our NF blast part, about how I think the difference between NF blast and NT blast is more like, it's TE, right? It's what works.
Yeah.
And that's what I like about the NT blasters. Like, I've actually learned a lot about
I kind of,
I mean, I've learned a lot of helpful tips from the NT blasters. That's what I'm trying to say,
yeah.
because they communicate the concepts really well. The ones that have it high,
Yeah.
they communicate the concepts really well, and it works. And like, there's so many times where like Tim Ferriss or one of these INTJs says something, you're like, that doesn't make any sense, and then you try and you're like, oh my god, that absolutely works.
Yeah.
Because they have narrowed
And
down
that
that
it
concept.
works. That's the thing.
Yes.
That's those. And I kind of think of like the NFJs. So the people who have NF blast fairly high, I feel like they are, if you're looking, if NI is very systems, therefore business, NF is like marketing and sales, and NT is like operations and like more what's the other word? Engineering and product.
Yeah, yeah,
Like
product, yeah.
NT Blast is going to build the thing, NF Blast is going to sell the thing.
Yeah, and scale it too. They're really good at scaling the thing, because they've narrowed
Anybody
down.
I think with NI is really good at scaling,
Yeah, yeah,
like
that's
high
true.
NI. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, because they're able to narrow down the key components and then bang those blocks together and make it
This
go.
is what
Yeah.
works. This is
Hmm.
what works.
Yeah. So NT Blast is pretty amazing.
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, apparently.
And then
And
ST
then
Play.
ST Play. So you have it last. Luis has it
Yeah, and I don't
last.
understand it.
Yeah. Well, I
Clearly.
remember. So my husband Luis is a well, I mean, he's got the same saviors as Dave. He's NIFI, but like he's play last. He's got ST play last, whereas Dave is ST play third. So it's not as big of an issue. And I remember when Luis had a coaching call with Shannon, they actually talked about his demon ST and how that is going to be the hardest thing for him because it's this sensory, what works in the sensory. So you got to gather the sensory and you got to make it work.
Yeah.
And the NF sleeps the lead sleeps, they tend to just want to stay in the ideal world because the sensory as a demon is like hard for them to deal with and they don't deal with that. So for him, that was going to be the big challenge for him was to get out of that NF and into the ST world, right?
Yeah.
ST,
especially as a double feminine, because his ST play is going to be double feminine, and so it's going to be a lot harder because there's no masculinity grounding it and like making it a little more. Whereas for me, I have mine is double masculine, so even though it's last, it feels a lot more immovable, and if anything, I'm constantly moving out of the way of it.
Right. Well, and also with you as a glass lizard,
right, I do have SE at the top.
Your top function is being pulled on. Yeah. Like, so even though ST play is last, like you've mentioned, you SE all the time. So you're kind of, you need to use that one part of that a lot. And you TE, your TE is third. So it's not,
Yeah. And I mean, for Luis as well, because his TE is second. So he's going to,
he TEs well.
Yeah. What works, not a problem, but it's probably, it's a sensory that both of you guys are missing.
Exactly. Yeah, I know. That's fun. Trust me. Yeah. See the demon dialogue that I did about that. Yeah.
Come check it out, guys.
So, okay. Anything else on you guys? Anything you want to say about your quadrant? Here's my question for you. What's it like when you meet others of your, in SFPs, NTJs? Do you guys hit it off or how's that work?
It's fantastic. I think it depends on a lot of things within that, but we speak the same. Like I just got off before you and I started recording. I recorded an interview with Josh and Austin for the channel that they're working on, and all three of us are in this quadrant. Quadra. I don't remember what we're calling them.
I think Socionics calls them Quadra, but we don't know anything about.
Okay,
we don't know anything about Socionics, so we might as well call them Quadrants. Yeah.
So they're in that one as well, and like Josh mentioned afterwards, like it's so easy to talk because it just feels like we're already speaking the same language, and I don't have to. Like I think anytime we're interacting with the world, we're trying to communicate effectively, right? Regardless of what your animal stack is, and so we're constantly trying to communicate and translate things in a way that will land for our audience.
Right.
And when I meet somebody who has the same animals as me, not same animals, sorry, same functions as me, it's like I don't have to do that translating, and it's like, oh, I didn't realize I was doing that and how much energy it was taking.
Yeah, it's like this little, it's like these little micro corrections that you're just always doing.
Yes.
And so you don't even realize it until you don't have to. Then all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, it's like a brother from another mother.
It's like, it's just so like relaxing and alleviating and just like, and for me, like, especially with like, with Austin and Josh, because I'm double masculine and they're both double feminine, like I can let my punch fly and not worry about offending them because it probably won't.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. And that's the really nice thing about the modalities.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's another one of those things that like, I'm constantly trying to keep it reined in and like keep it in a, like manageable way. And it's like, oh,
I don't have to because you get it. Because you get me. Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
Because double feminines want to be punched, so to speak,
Yeah. And for me, because again, like I said, I have a lot of you people in my life. You people. But you're right. There's like that micro translation thing. And so it is a little bit hard for me because because I'm double masculine. I've got my masculine SI. And so it's like wanting to punch on the SI, but you guys are SE. And so there is like a little bit of a friction there because we're punching at in different ways.
Different things. Yeah. Absolutely. And that's like when I look at our partnership over the past year, it is absolutely masculine SE versus masculine SI anytime you and I have a conflict.
Right. It's not really the TEs, it's the S. Yeah. And like, it's interesting because I feel that same way with masculine NI, or yeah, masculine NI too, is it's just like, it's move, damn it. Right. That's like how I feel because I'm feminine and NE, so it's extroverted. I'm just like, God, yeah. Oh, speaking of, I think Louise just got home. Anyway,
Okay.
masculine NI, some
That's so true. Oh
yeah,
yeah, and you married masculine, and
I did. I
mm,
did. Yeah. Yeah. But he's feminine with a
he is.
tribe. So it's like he's very like, and then another thing, speaking of, well, FI is just, masculine. So your quadrant, whatever, has FITE also. And so it had, when I see that masculine FI, whether it's an NTJ, SFP, NFP, whatever,
You
I
love it.
love it. Right? Like I'm there for it. So
Yeah,
yeah, especially the
obviously.
double decider, Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. Um, okay, so now mine, right? The deltas. Or did you have anything
So I wanted to talk a little about ST play
else?
in a savior state. Because we didn't really like, I'm thinking of like,
Yeah, we talked about it.
Heather and Joey and
Yeah.
Tony Robbins and
Tony
whoever else.
Robbins.
Like, what is that ST play? And I'm also like bringing up a bunch of double masculines. So who have double masculine ST
But
play?
that's true. I mean, are there and Shannon. Well, Shannon's got
ST play at the top, yeah.
there you go. And she's
Anna,
not double masculine, she's visual. So
yeah,
there's one.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when I went through what I noticed with them is they are very much about what works in reality. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it's the TE and the SE, and so they have a high bar of like, you've got to show me the sensory that this is working. You know what I mean? Like the N is not
Yes,
the N is
yes.
not enough. The N is not enough. You can't just give me a concept.
Give me the sensory
Give me the
that this is
sensory
working.
that
Yeah.
this is
And
working.
it's very I think it was Ashley who mentioned this on the Facebook group. And this is something I just read earlier today, so it's still kind of percolating. But ST play is going to have a very like shallow understanding of whatever ST is versus ST sleep,
Mm,
because ST play is going to, or all of our play functions, they're going to be looking at a rather surface thing of whatever it is it's looking at
yeah.
versus the sleep is going to go a lot deeper.
Deeper, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I can see
Deeper, but maybe in a very like, it's not going to see the spectrum.
that.
I mean, that's a definition, but yeah,
Yeah.
I'm just reiterating definition.
Yeah, so you're right. I mean, Tony Robbins is double masculine, but a lot of his presentation is very like, it is very physical. That's the other thing. These people, they're very physical, and Shannon talked about
Yeah.
that with her son Cody. Like he that part of it is the double masculine aspects of it, but it's also just that sensory and wanting it to work in reality and see that. It's
Yes.
very much
Yes.
like not in your face. I don't want to say in your face, but I just want to say it's like very physical and noticeable kind of a thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
yeah,
That's
your
now
quadra.
mine. The good
Yeah.
old NFPs, STJ.
STJs. Yep.
Yeah, I feel like I work with a lot of STJs. Yeah, I feel like I work with a lot of ESTJs and ISTJs.
I am like, I have a lot of STJs in my life, which is very weird. But
Yeah,
they all have feminine SI as a savior,
yeah,
not masculine SI. My dad had masculine SI as a savior, and we did not get along.
yeah.
But the
Masculine
feminine
SI.
SI,
Yeah, masculine SI is a punchy thing.
it is, and
Yeah,
it's because we're both punching over the sensory, but we're punching at it in different ways. Like, you and I
yeah,
might both punch over the TE, but because we're both trying to TE, that's okay because we both want the best idea to win out,
correct.
right?
Yeah,
Whereas the SI versus SC is gonna punch over different things.
right. It's that extroverted versus introverted, like you were
Yeah.
saying earlier. That's
Yeah.
kind of how the whatever organized versus the gathering part of
Yeah.
it. Yeah, so we're hitting not only on human need, at the same time, basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it,
So SF sleep. So your
yeah.
SF is not going to be very
So
visible at all.
no, well, and you and I have talked about this about SF and like how can I, because it feels like as an NT, the SF is like where I can be saved, or you know what I mean. Like that's the thing I need to
Like
connect
in
with.
your alpha journey, yeah, that's the one that's going to
Yeah.
save you.
And
Yeah.
so that's been a big thing or learning for me is like,
Excuse
okay,
me.
what's my flavor of SF? Like, how do I work that? For me, it's this, yeah. SI, what I value, basically the SI and the FI combined, what I value. And so for me, it is a lot of like journaling and like I have to write it down. And I really, now granted, I'm sleep last, right? So for me, it is harder to access because it's a demon, but you know, that's a lot of what it is. And that's the reason why I interviewed Stephanie, is to try to understand what SF sleep is like in a savior state,
Yeah.
you know? Yeah, because she's FISI, and it it's still the same kind of thing, except for that, similar to you with Savior Sensory, she's like obligated to the sensory, but for her, it's like the SI of it, you know?
Mm.
Yeah, yeah. So she's still an SF savior, just like you are. So she's savior obligated to the sensory and
Yeah.
what she values, though. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
And yeah, popularity, culture, whichever way you want to look at it.
Hmm.
Yeah. But I feel like with SF sleep, again, because the sleep animals, the letter temperaments on the sleeps are not going to be as visible. So like the SF sleep, even in a savior state, is probably not going to seem very SF. And I think that's one of the reasons, like when you look at Tiger, for example, Tiger Woods, who's SIFI, why a lot of people typed him as TI is
Yeah.
because his blast is going to be SITE,
Yes. Yeah.
right?
That's true.
and
Yep.
and
The
this is one of the reasons why I think the quadras could be really impactful, is because, like, okay, so there's the SF is going on internally, what I value, right? And when they come and talk to the tribe, it's ST blast. So how do you know you're not looking at TI and you're looking at FI when you're trying to type people? And that's
Mhm.
hard. It's a tricky one.
Mhm.
I think
Well, yeah.
Martha people also got as a TI user.
Yes. Yeah. I know I
I
did.
mean,
I got her as ST. I got her as ST. And even my husband, I thought he was a TI.
yeah, yep.
I mean, it's FI, but still, like introverted it can be tough. But yeah. So let's see. So consume, NF consume. Yeah, NF consume is an interesting animal.
It is. Yeah, we kind of talked about it a little bit
It
earlier.
is yeah. Yeah. I feel like the one thing that I've said before, and I'll say it again, is like I feel like I have to wade through the sensory to gather my ideas. Like I have to deal with this sensory
Yep.
to get my ideas. And so like because I'm still savior consume, right? I'm play consume. So I don't feel like SE is always that big of a problem for me, even though it's a shadow, because I kind of have to do it to get to my consume. I have to do some amount of gathering the sensory to make my any connections that I want. That's what I'm after. I'm trying to gather the ideas, but we live in a sensory world. You can't avoid it, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the reasons why David Shannon mentioned in one YouTube video or another that, like, as far as like how hard functions are, like they mentioned that SI is a hard function to have, especially in the savior state, because you have to do a lot before you can organize the sensory. Whereas having SE is like, well, no, just open your eyes. Like there's not
Yeah.
a lot of work or effort required in order to SE.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Yeah, sort of. Well, for me to do it depends on, if you want to SE and actually take it in though, right? Because a
oh
lot of
well, yeah.
what I do is, so the reason, by the way, I thought I was consumed demon. I thought I was consumed last. And part of it is like, I don't feel like I really take in the sensory. So
Yeah.
sure, I'm taking it in, but it's in this like skimming kind of a
Yeah.
way to just get to the ideas. It's like, well, let me just
Yes.
get to the ideas.
Whereas
Yeah.
I am the opposite. Like if I am reading a book, I need to read every goddamn word. Like
Right.
I can't just skim or skip words or just like look at the patterns popping out. Like I have to read every word in order for me to have any of that understanding and I understanding.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So you have NF, yeah, so NF consume. And the other thing about NF consume is like, so we were talking about how SF consume wants to gather the sensory of what people's emotional states are. You
Mhm.
kind of want to gather the concepts of emotional states,
Yeah.
of value states. And I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of people who are on the NFP SDJ axis, you guys are into like spirituality. And like when we talk about hippie,
That's the
I think
hippie.
of NF
Yeah.
hippie consume. I don't think of NF blast.
That's true. Yeah, you're right. And I mean, of course, the ENFPs and the INFPs are kind of known for that. They're
Yeah.
kind of known for being that especially the ENFPs, especially are known for being like the unicorn flying in the
But
air kind
like
of
I
type.
see it in STJs as well. Like
Yeah.
my sister is
Yes.
also fascinated by that.
Yeah. Yeah. With the STJs, it's like under their surface, right? Like
Yeah,
they
yeah.
put that very like
They're
STJ,
not oozing it.
they're not oozing it, but it's
Yes.
there.
Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah.
It's in there. Yeah, exactly. So then ST Blast, speaking of the STJs, ST Blasters. So yeah, to me, I mean, we've kind of talked about it a little bit, but yeah, it's like the organized sensory of what works again, right?
Yeah.
SITE. My blast is totally ST Blast. Like I am
Yeah.
an ST Blaster. I am bullet point. I will tell you. And then the other thing, I've got double masculine ST Blast. So like when I do, like when it's like, okay, we are fighting, I pull out all of the sensory and I'm like, well, number one, this, number two, that, number three, this, number four, that, subparagraph B. Like I don't play. Like it's like gotta do.
That's so STJ, yeah. That's ST Blast,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And
And so one of the things that I noticed, so two quick things. When I was preparing for the PCT, or just like anytime when I am in my consume mode, like, okay, I have this thing I want to make work. Like, I don't know, I want to learn more about how to get more followers for our YouTube channel.
Mhm.
I will go and consume a bunch of articles and information and all of the sensory stuff. And it's always coming from ST Blasters,
Yeah.
where it's like, here's a sensory, here's how it works. Here's a sensory, here's how it works.
Yeah.
Like preparing for the PCT, it was a lot of gear lists, which is a very ST kind of blast. Like here's literally every single thing in my pack. And here is the TE reason I have it.
Yeah. I think this was the one that Dave and Shannon noticed when they had their RC business, because all these ISTJs would send them like the exact same form email. It felt like dear sir and madam, this. It's like no matter who it came from. And I mean, I'm guilty of it. I mean, that's why I truly think that my double masculine ST Blast is why I was testing an ESTJ. Early last year when I would take the test, it started coming up as ESTJ, and it's just that double masculine ST. SITE blast happening. So it's helpful. It's a helpful blast.
It is. Well, yes, I like, well,
clear.
With any blast, it's trying to be helpful, right?
It's trying
Whether
to
it's landing or not is another matter.
Exactly. Yeah.
Quick story.
Yeah.
When I was in Australia earlier this summer, as if it's still summer, it's not, it's fall. I'm still in denial. When I was in Australia earlier this summer, my host at an Airbnb that I stayed, like right when I got in the door, I didn't even get in the door. He met me downstairs. It was this ST blast of everything in that area if I want to go explore, to the point that he was telling me that if I want to go north on the trolley, I should be on this side of the road. And if I want to go south on the trolley, I should be on this side of the road. And my SE brain is like, A, I ain't going to remember that. And B, I will figure it out when I get there. So it was very much a frustration of him organizing this SI for me, where I'm like, dude, I just want to go and gather it for myself. Thank you very much. And it was like a half hour of me just like shoving down this impulse to tell him to fuck off. I didn't like, not to actually fuck off, but just like, hey, I got it.
Yeah, it's so funny. Yeah.
But yeah. Anyway,
good times with ST Blast. But I do, it is one of my like, it's something I use at work quite a bit.
Oh yeah, of course.
When I'm asked to put together a presentation or whatever, I mean, I go through that whole function flow sort of thing where I for me, it's gather the concept. So a lot of times there is some SE involved where I have to like get an article or something and I'll gather that. But then, I ST it out. And that's, I'm kind of known for being a nice communicator via email like that, because it's like, I got very just like,
hey, here's the sensory. Here's
what works.
Here's what works. Yeah. And like I said, like, even though I was just ragging on ST with that guy, like, obviously there's a lot of value in it, because when I want to go and consume, I end up consuming from STs a lot. Mm-hmm. When I put on my, like, okay, I need to figure out how this thing works. That's what I do. That's what you do.
Yeah. Go get those guys. Yeah. Yep. So then lastly, hey, this is nice. We're going to end right on my saviors. NT play. It's so different from SF play. Yeah. NT play is that like gathering concepts that work. It's puzzle. For me, my experience of NT play is like puzzle figuring out by sort of pinging externally.
I also find that.
So I'm not always pinging the tribe. It may not always be the tribe. Yeah. Go ahead.
I also find that TE play, whether it's ST or NT play, is very
Yes.
execution oriented, in the sense that,
Absolutely.
like, hey, this is what works. I will expend the energy to make it work.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
that's a very
That's it. And so, as of this recording, so it's like September 2019, in the class, there are two of us that are typed NT. I mean, there's a few, I think there's a couple other NT, but there's two of us that are fairly active. Kendrick and I are the two NT lead play, or actually, hold on, Monica, but NT NFPs, I guess is what I'm
yeah.
saying.
Monica pops in every once in a while.
Yeah, yeah. So she's an NT play ESTJ.
Yes, she
So
is.
yeah, so it's very like EJ EP like, and Kendrick and I are both EPEJ like, and so there's a ENFP group chat that we've all kind of gone into, not all of us, but a group of
Oh,
ENFPs, and like that is clearly like the difference between us is they are NF consume lead and he and I are NT play lead, and so we're very like what works, what's effective, yeah, like execution. We're like execution
yeah,
machines, and they're like
yeah,
consume machines.
yeah,
And so what
yeah,
they're trying to do is like get in gear to actually go execute something, and what we're trying to do is, okay, we need to really consume, right? I mean, I do it in a savior state, but then I'm demon blast, so then I don't do anything with
yep,
it.
yep.
And in
That's
his
how I
case,
feel.
like he's really good at doing stuff with it and probably could consume more, so yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so we discussed all of this, right?
What? Okay.
All the animals and all the types. So then, like, what patterns are emerging?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know that I have an answer.
Well, one other thing on
NT play.
Delta. Well,
Oh yeah,
Delta,
Delta.
kind of the same experience that you just said for the Gamma. I feel the same way when I do come across NFPs and STJs.
Where
It
you
is,
just you like,
yeah, yeah,
oh my god, I have all this extra brain space because I'm not translating.
uh-huh,
Yeah,
yeah. And so the conversations just go so much more
so easily, so easily. Yeah,
easy. Yeah, they're just easier. Yeah. Yeah. So
like
that was another one of our classmates, Kevin, came from Australia and we met up here, and it was just like, wow, another OPS typed ENFP. Like we can just talk.
yeah,
It was a whole different deal. It was like, wow. And I had never really talked to him before, and we immediately
it was just
like,
easy. Yeah,
yeah,
that's how I feel. Like
yep.
Heather, even before Heather got typed, like it was easy to just talk to her because she spoke my language, and we both have the same modalities, and our function order is the same. And it
The
was just
modality.
like,
Yeah.
I think modality, yeah, definitely plays a factor. Alan, I was talking to him recently, and he's TESE. I think he's
Yeah, he is.
Joe Rogan's type twin, so he's double masculine TESE. And even though he's an ENTJ, like, and through our conversation, he was punching on the TE quite a bit, but it was like, oh yeah, I understand why you're punching on the TE. It makes total sense.
Yeah.
Go
Yeah.
for it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah. And same with Monica and I, because she's
Yeah, yeah,
like we just mentioned, an ESTJ, TENE, and immediately the two of us were like, yeah. And every
yep.
time in our little masculine TE group, whenever anything comes up, I always tag her like, you're doing this
Monica,
too. You're doing it
right?
like me, right? Yeah. And she's like, yeah, I'm doing it like you too. And I'm like,
Yep.
great. We're
Yeah,
so,
and Heather's my person for that.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, it is cool when you finally do come across. I just feel like I feel like for me, there aren't a ton of NFPs in my life. There are some STJs at work, so I interact with them in a sort of a professional setting, but I don't feel like I have close friends. I have a few that I think might be in that area, but yeah, it's not as common, it feels like.
So that's a really interesting point that you bring up. I'm pretty sure one of the reasons my last job was exhausting, I guess, going into it, is because I'm pretty sure the overall vibe and culture of the engineering team, but definitely like the team I was on, was very alpha quadrant, which is like I share none of the axes, none of the functions with them, right? So
Yeah.
everything just felt constantly exhausting to constantly translate, and constantly having miscommunications and misunderstandings with my manager
Yeah.
in a very like, even though we're both coming at it like trying to communicate, it's we might as well be speaking different languages because we're speaking the same words but we're not communicating the meaning at all.
Yeah.
And I think after, it can be challenging, for sure. It takes extra effort.
Yeah. 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 I think. And maybe that's why I've enjoyed my time working where I work, because there are a lot of STJs around.
Yeah, they
And
speak
so
your language.
they totally do. And
Yeah.
so even the ISTJs and the ESTJs, I'm like, no, I get you. Like, I'm
Yeah.
fairly sure my boss is an ESTJ, and it was funny because so I've got a birthday coming up, and she's like, oh, you're a Libra. That explains some things, like why we get along. And I'm thinking, it's also because you're an ESTJ. You know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's
And
also because you're an ESTJ. Like,
I
I get
wonder
you.
if like it would be so fascinating, like say in 10 years time or whenever, like when we have a method of easily typing people,
Yeah.
how like assembling teams would work or something like that. Like if you assembled a team where everybody's on the same axis, on the one hand you would end up leaving a void in the
Yep.
same way that Dave and Shannon are leaving a void on the axes that they are not on.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, the collaborative environment and the efficacy and the communications and a lot of these other things that are often pain points would probably diminish significantly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like I'm going through interviews right now, and like when you have the culture fit interview, which is this like very vague, not ST thing, right?
Yeah.
If we could ST it in an ops kind of way, I bet you they would be looking for similarities of type
Yeah. Yeah. It's so funny
or
because
complementary.
we don't even have like we have just the classic like structured interview, which is just such like
Oh yeah.
an SD thing of like, we're just gonna do these bullet points and we're gonna run everybody through these same bullet points. It's like, yeah, it's not the best way to
Yeah.
find a good fit. It's really hard, but
Yeah,
it's very ST. Like, yeah.
I'm in
Okay.
tech, so there's like half a dozen interviews
Yeah.
before you even get an on-site.
Yeah.
It's exhausting.
Yeah. I will say, I guess one other thing before we drop off my Quadra, I like the lead SIs. Sometimes I clash with them because of my masculine SI demon, but I'm also like, I have such respect
Right.
for them because they have the SI and it's not like this
Because they're
awkward weird
owning
demon
it, the
thing like
thing that
I've
you
got.
struggle with.
Like, owning it. Exactly. And my human need, like I have all 4 human needs. My human need of control is tied to the sensory. And so I'm like, they've got it. they've got it. I can trust them. So nice.
Yes, that's what it is.
Yes. I can
That's
trust them.
like, so if I'm trying to NI something, it's exhausting. But when I'm talking to somebody who's an NI user and like, it's like, oh, I can lean on that NI because you figured it out. So I know it's a real concept. It's a real thread that's happening.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, it was funny. I was texting a friend of mine. She wanted my address, and so I texted it like in the ST clarity of like SI, like the right way, if you will.
Yeah.
And she texted me back, "Thank you for writing that right. Like, thank you for texting me right." I was like, got you.
Yeah.
I got you.
That's how I
Boo.
feel when somebody writes their type in a different order. Like, no, don't fuck with the order. My brain understands this order. Just leave it.
Yeah.
There's
Right.
no reason the modality should be at the end of the type.
Yeah.
Just put it in the front.
Actually, I'm stubborn, which is
What? I missed that.
I'm coming around to I'm starting to come around a little bit to when people do that. I think because I didn't come from
spending too
Myers.
much time with Kendrick. No.
Maybe that, but
Kendrick,
there's
we love you.
There's a few people who do that. I think the modality at the end for some reason is less of a problem for me as it's been in the past. I don't know.
Kind of like we agreed we'd call it OPS, and now we're both kind of slowly calling it
ops, which I don't like it when it comes out of my mouth. My demon SI is like, don't do that again.
I didn't like it at first, and now I kind of do.
Yeah. Well, FI. I like it. I don't like it. Yeah. Okay.
So,
anything else to add? Otherwise, I think I gotta go. And I know you said you had.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so I think we discussed each like axis combination, and I think this is like part 1 of a very long conversation. I don't know if we'll continue this. Eventually, we'll bring it back around in an episode, but we definitely, I think, have a lot more to discuss here as to like, okay, so what kind of patterns emerge?
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
I think we saw a couple, especially with the axes that you and I know intimately.
Right. But those alphas, man.
Right. We shouldn't call it alpha axis because it's confusing me with alpha.
Sure. Yeah. You're right. Yeah.
We should call these something else. Anybody have any ideas? What are you guys noticing?
Because for me, it's hard to remember the Myers-Briggs. So it's hard for me to say it's the NTPSF.
Oh, okay.
One, you know what I mean? It's like a lot for my little SI to handle. So Yeah. Yeah. Let the tribe figure out something. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. So wrap it up. I'll wrap it up.
Yeah.
Okay. So what did you think about this topic? We'd love to hear from you, especially if we can hear from people from all across the types. That would be good to know,
Yes.
and
What are
hear like,
you noticing?
yeah, what are you noticing? How do you respond? You can find us in all the OPS or ops Facebook
Ops.
groups. uh, YouTube channel, or you can email us directly at objectivelytyped@gmail.com. We'll post our upcoming episode topics for the ones where you're typing, if you want to type along with us. And we'd love to hear your suggestions for anything, topic ideas, people of interest, questions, whatever you want to do. So please subscribe, give us a thumbs up, a like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I think that's it. Thanks for listening to Objectively Type with Evelyn.
And Versavia.
Until next time, bye.
Bye.
And
And scene.
scene.